This is The Late Shift with Joe Warmington on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
But pinch hitting, as he's always great to do, is Ross McLean from rossmcleansecurity.com. Ross, welcome back to The Late Shift, and you've got some breaking news for us out of Kitchener.
Yeah, hi, Joe. Good to be with you tonight to share some of the breaking news. As people are probably aware, we had that awful murder take place over the weekend down in Kitchener where the torso was found. And the body has been identified through some good police work. Pardon me, Joe. The victim's name is Kelsey Louise Felker. She's 24 years old in Kitchener, and the way the police were able to identify her was by the T-shirt that she was wearing. It was a custom T-shirt, and they were able to track that down through e-commerce as to where the T-shirt came and how it got to her. So I have a feeling now that they're going to be pretty close to breaking this case, now that they have her identity.
Well, I know that I read on rossmcleansecurity.com on the weekend that was a suggestion that you had made, that the T-shirt, and maybe you can let the listeners know what it said on the T-shirt.
Yeah, well, it was a custom-made T-shirt. It said, was it Princess, I'd rather be a vampire. So obviously she was someone who followed in like the Twilight series, the vampire series of movies. But what's interesting about that is that particular T-shirt, when I look for it, is mostly sold by one particular website. And they offer it in 92 different styles and sizes. So I used to work with e-commerce, Joe. And I know that based on that, if they have the T-shirt, the size, the style, the material, they'd be able to contact them and find out if that shirt was delivered anywhere in the area.
Yeah, and then you said that on your site, and that's, I think, what police ended up doing. Obviously it's a very smart group of officers out at Kitchener-Waterloo, and they tracked it down. Now, what will they be doing now to try to nail this suspect? This is a really horrific murder. Or I don't know if you've heard, but earlier in the show, we talked about the Gilmore and Tice cases. Obviously, these are very difficult cases, but you know what? These are very dangerous people out there.
Yeah, they're difficult, but I'll tell you what my sense is from this one. I mean, I've looked at the killer. I put up a profile of the killer on my site of what I think who the person's probably going to end up being that the police will look at. But what happens here, Joe, is you can tell with most in domestic violence and those sort of things, violence is the first refuge of the ignorant, meaning that they're people who don't have tools for how to get along and how to figure out things in life. So their best answer is violence or abuse, and in the most extreme case, murder. But what that also means is they're not very sharp or smart in how they cover their tracks. So I think what will happen now, the police were very quick to identify her. They've got a team of 28 officers. They're using the gang method themselves for going after this. And they are going to track down everything about her life and where she's been. And so I think they'll be able to turn up who a likely suspect is. I mean, I really hoping to see a break in this case by the end of the week.
Ross McLean is my guest, and we talked to, as I mentioned, we had Steve Ryan on and Sean McCowan, the brother of Aaron Gilmore. 30 years later, they've offered $200,000, $50,000 from Toronto Police, $150,000 from the Gilmore family to help solve the murder of Aaron Gilmore and Susan Tice. 30 years later, Ross, is it likely that something could break on this, or is this one of these cases that may never be solved?
Well, no, it's entirely possible with the DNA there. One of the things that happens is sometimes you'll get people towards the end of their life, they'll make a deathbed confession, or else someone else will decide, I should tell this to clear it off my chest. I know that this person probably did this murder. And if they drop a call down to the police, they'll be able to check the DNA. There's other things that they can do. There's a chance that they could solve to find out who the killer was here, for sure.
Now, would you get a sense of somebody that would do that twice? The DNA shows that it's the same person, and then not be heard from again in terms of DNA. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, that was way back before DNA testing started taking place. We've only recently got to DNA. I'm not sure where Toronto Police is with all of the DNA that they've collected or that they have on cases and bad guys. I know that down in New York, there was a huge backlog of DNA for cases that hadn't been tested yet. So I'm sure they're going through and testing DNA as they get it and as tips come in. So there's definitely a chance.
The murder case of 9-year-old Kesean Williams out in Brampton, Peel Police are still working on that case, and there doesn't seem to be anybody arrested yet. What do you figure is happening there?
Well, the police are they're gonna, we discussed something like this before, Joe. They've got their cards close to their chest on this one. I'll guarantee you there's lots of information they know from studying the crime scene about the killer, where they were standing, probably how tall they are, maybe how old they are. They'll be shaking all the trees to get tips out. But as Detective Ryan said earlier, and in all of these cases, if there's somebody who knows something about any crime that's taken place, maybe they saw somebody fighting or yelling at someone, you're not wasting the police's time by dropping a call to them to say you suspect something. And I would think in this case here, the community around that 9-year-old boy, people know who's responsible for that. They need to call.
One of the scenarios that has been put out there is that could it have been somebody that lived there before? Because they've investigated, there was some talk of there being activities there that were illegal before. Do you think that's likely, or do you think it's more likely that this person or this home was targeted because of somebody in that home?
Of course, they're both possible. Police know more than I know, but I would tend to think that he was targeted as opposed to somebody shooting from previous tenants in the house. I mean, when you look at a 9-year-old boy through a window, you can pretty much tell if you can see his head, how old he is. You have to sit there and take dead aim, and it was one shot that did it. So somebody was looking intently. They knew what they were doing. I think something will crack on that one.
Ross McLean, thank you very much. Appreciate you pinch hitting here, and thank you. Great information.
That's great, Joe. Thanks very much.
All the best. We're going to take a break here for news here at 11 o'clock with Dave Woodard, and when we come back, hopefully we'll get Mama Lady, and we're going to talk a little bit about the situation with Ezra Levant. You're listening to News Talk 1010.